Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about preparedness. We want to make sure that you are ready for any disaster that may come your way. My guest today is Micheal Dube, and he is out of the Ontario, Canada area. So we are talking about coping with emergencies, disasters, and crises today. So how can we be self-reliant and help you deal with problems? How do you restore your essential functions in any emergency? Well, not only is he going to talk about that, but we're going to touch on his book as well, Everyday Readiness Guidance, and I am so excited to be able to do so. So let me tell you a little bit more about Mike. Mike Dube has worked the past 45 years in various industries, from grocery stores and gas stations to firefighting and emergency preparedness. From 1979 to 1990, Mike worked as a field operator at the Pickering Nuclear Power Plant near Toronto, Ontario. While in 1991, he moved on to firefighting in Northern Ontario, spending 17 years with the City of Greater Sudbury Fire and Emergency Services as a firefighter, training officer, peer counselor and critical incident stress management, and infectious prevention officer for the fire service. Well, in 2008, Mike moved to the Office of the Ontario Fire Marshal as a program specialist with the Emergency Preparedness Response Unit, specializing in hazardous materials response, satellite and radio communication, emergency environmental monitoring, training, and continuity and operation planning and emergency preparedness. Well, Mike has retired from the Fire Marshal Office as of the year 2012. He is semi-retired and lives in Collingwood, Ontario with his wife, Cindy. So as you can hear, I am so excited about talking about being ready. So without any further ado, let's pull the microphone up to Mike. Good morning. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, Dr. Angela. This is the first time for me, and I'm just as excited as you are for it, because this is my passion.
Yes.
Everyday readiness guidance and all that it means. It took me It took me about 5 years to research it and develop it, and it's good to be getting the message out now.
Great, yes. Now, let's start off with this question, and that is so that people understand a few of the basics. What is the difference between risk and hazard?
Okay, a hazard is something, it's either an energy source, a substance, a condition. For instance, if you are living on the edge of a cliff, things like that present a physical threat. Should you interact with their boundary, or should their boundary break and whatever is stored inside be released? That's a hazard. So we're looking at if you are living in a tidal zone, there's your hazard is the ocean. If you are living near a volcano, the hazard's the volcano. If you happen to be right next to a rail yard or an explosives plant, then there's your hazard right there. The rail yard, you never know what's coming through there, and the explosives plant, well, obviously that's a big problem. A risk, on the other hand, is your probability of interacting with that hazard. So if you happen to be, for instance, traffic is a hazard. If you happen to be skateboarding or roller skating down one of the interstate highways, there's the risk. You're putting yourself in a lot of harm's way. Soldiers usually find great risk in what they do. Firefighters, of course, when they answer a call, their risk is the unknown condition that's in a fire. So that's your basic difference.
Now, I know that one of the things that you talk about is a mission statement. I think that we both can agree that most businesses have a mission statement. One of the things that I do as a therapist when I am doing family counseling is that I ask the question, do you have a family mission statement? Now, most of the time, that takes people totally off guard, like, what? Families can have a mission statement? I didn't realize that. And then they really love, and I say that with air quotes, doing that bit of homework of coming up with a mission statement. Do you think that, since you're talking about preparedness and being ready for everything that could happen, do you think that families should also have a mission statement or a sense of preparedness when it comes to, or a plan when it comes to our emergencies? And if so, how should a family tackle that?
So that is a very interesting question. When I was doing my research, I started it this way. Humans have been in a constant search for meaning or a why to their existence. This is why some people will be looking around, why am I here? Why is the world the way it is? That kind of thing. So that I found in all my experience with reading about scientists and having worked in all of the industry that I have, I don't believe that we are privy or ever going to be privy to the answers for the question why. I know that one of the greatest Nobel Prize-winning physicists, Richard Feynman, a New Yorker, he always said that we can learn a lot about how things work, and that's where all of the laws of physics come in. He says we are probably never going to know why, and he said that's something that nobody can ever have the insight into. This is one of the reasons why I'm looking at a mission statement, and that is, each person can define their reason for being. It's not like we're going to be able to find one, so we create our own. And in creating our own, that mission statement, that becomes your guiding light for whatever you're going to do. If you are going to, for instance, if you claim that you're going to be a firefighter, doctor, teacher, soldier, astronaut, whatever, all of the decisions you make will be pointed, will contribute to that final goal that you want to reach. So as a family, if you create a point that you want to reach, so if you say in your mission statement the reason for your family being together, and if that is to support each other through all kinds of catastrophes or good times or whatever else, and to put down on paper that this is your reason for being together as a family, then any decision that you make after that, so in this case, we're talking about emergency planning, so every decision that goes into your plan, how much money you're going to have on hand, what you're going to pack in your kit, who you're going to approach or talk to in your neighborhood should a disaster occur, what you're going to do to support each other in the case of emergency. So that means you're going to find each other, contact, get together, make sure everybody's safe, that kind of thing. That is what an emergency plan should accomplish for you. So every decision you make after that, every decision you make after that, even in everyday operations, will go to support that plan.
Now, what do you suggest as the very basis, the 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to the individual preparedness to deal with an emergency? Like if someone says, I just don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the resources, what are the first 3 things that they really need to focus in or make sure that they have?
Well, if you look at the United States Marine Corps, for instance, they have a 3-word, or maybe I'm wrong about this, but what I found in my reading was they have 3 words that they live by: improvise, adapt, and overcome. So the way that the military prepares, they have the military or firefighters or police officers. They have a set of basic skills that they learn. So in the case of, I speak from a firefighter viewpoint, getting dressed in your turnout gear, climbing a ladder, pulling a hose, rescuing people, that kind of thing. Those are all basic skills. And those basic skills, then we will practice until they become second nature. And in the event of an emergency, we don't have to stop and think about what we're going to do, because most people will freeze up in an emergency. So what I suggest to people then, when they say, well, I don't have the time or the money, if you take one or two skills, actually, if you look right into what you already do, you probably already have those skills. For instance, putting gas in a car, being able to change a tire, being able to get money out of a bank, shopping, and being able to stretch a dollar a long way, buying clothes. So if you're in a cold weather area, you want to be able to buy clothes for cold weather. All of these basic skills that we have that we sort of take for granted. The reason you may think that, well, okay, shopping, do I really have to practice shopping? If all of the stores are shut down and all you have is whatever's available in your neighborhood or what they may make available through emergency shelters and that kind of thing, you have to be able to shop. You have to be smart enough to go in and not look for comfort items. You're looking for things that are going to help you with your safety. And when you look at the basics, food, shelter, medical care, security, that kind of thing. So shopping around for things that will help you with that. And then being able to collaborate with neighbors. So you look around your neighborhood, you find out who has a skill set that you may not have. A mechanic, for instance, to help you fix your car in the case of an emergency. If you have snow plowing, if you are in an area where they have a lot of snow, and if you can get a group together in your neighborhood to help each other dig your car out. How to repair plumbing in your house, so that if you're asked to stay at home indoors and you have a plumbing problem, that's something that, if you call for a plumber in the case of an emergency, you are not going to get an answer. Right. So if you can fix or do basic plumbing repairs on your own, there's something that you can take care of, and it's not going to cost you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. There are many other things like that we handle on a daily basis that right. that shouldn't cost. They cost very little.
Right.
And
well, I tell you, as you're sitting here and you're reminding me of this, it's like we're definitely nodding our heads. We have an international audience here, be it that you are listening in California or in Kentucky or in Atlanta or Virginia, New York, or in Canada. I think everyone is saying, yes, we do need to make sure we have those basic skills. Now, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, I want to make sure that everyone is able to not only pick up a copy of your book, but stay in contact with you, Mike. Can you remind everyone, how should they do that, please?
They can go to Amazon.com. It is on there. It's also on the Reader's Digest website. Their branch of Life Rich Publishing carries the book as well.
Alrighty, everyone. Well, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We need to take a very short break, but when we get back, we'll continue talking about coping with emergencies, disasters, and crises. We'll be back right after this. Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right, you can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know, which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative? I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Discovery. No, just a sec. What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer, get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. We are talking about coping with emergencies, disasters, and crises today. Now, depending on where you live in the world, then you can never be too prepared for whatever happens in your neck of the woods. I happen to have grown up on the East Coast. Growing up on the East Coast, we had to be ready for hurricanes. Having lived in California, we needed to be ready for earthquakes. Perhaps you are in the heartland and you're dealing with tornadoes, or you live in a different part of this beautiful earth of ours, and there's something that you need to be prepared for. But the one thing that I think we all can agree on is that we need to be prepared. So that's what we're talking about today. If you're saying, well, I live in a pretty cool area of the world, great job. But should something ever happen, I would rather that you be prepared. So let's get out those pens and papers, jot down some notes, put it on your phone, or make sure that you come back and listen to this show again, because Micheal Dube is sharing some great information. The name of his book is Everyday Readiness Guidance. So, Mike, the next question that I want to ask of you is, what are some realistic goals when it comes to individual preparedness?
Okay, when I looked at this question, I thought about this quite some time, and I'm trying to keep this to a point where people don't have to go online, they don't have to buy a lot of things, this kind of thing. So, the first thing that I put on my list was to develop situational awareness. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you should be aware, especially where you live, you should be aware of any hazards that may be around you. So if you're in traffic, there's your hazard. If you are walking around downtown and you happen to be texting on your phone when you're walking near some railway tracks, you may want to pay more attention, that kind of thing. Right. The next thing to understand is that the circumstances around you are always going to change. So the situation, the way you see it the first time before you look back down at your phone, it may not be like that when you look up again. Mm-hmm. So you have to be aware of that. Understand and set your mind to the fact that you are going to lose things. In an emergency, especially a big disaster, that kind of thing, you are going to lose things. So what I tell people is don't develop a big attachment to whatever you own. If you have things that are really precious to you, take steps to protect them. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, a great invention that we have right now is Tupperware. If mm-hmm. you have little trinkets and that kind of thing that you want to protect, put those in Tupperware, seal them up with tape, they float. It's a good way to look at it. Monetary-wise, set yourself a budget and establish that before you commit to anything, and make sure that you stick to it. Mm-hmm. And always take care of your necessities first. So food, shelter, security, and medical. Those are the things that are extremely important. Those are the things that are going to get you through any disaster. As far as your plan, put one together and actually practice it. So far, none of these cost any money. Mm-hmm. Forming partnerships in your neighborhood. Now, FEMA's got a great plan out. It's called the Community Emergency Response Team. Form one of those in your neighborhood. Go onto their website and find out how to do it and get one of those together. And then, of course, like we talked about before the break, learning the basic skills. Those are all realistic goals for your individual preparations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, having worked as a first responder in so many different capacities, I have to ask kind of the flip side of the coin, and that is, are there any drawbacks to the information that our city governments or our communities or organizations, that they're trying to get us on the right page or get us on the right footing, but are there any drawbacks to any of the things that they say? Like, is anyone pushing back on something, saying that's too expensive, or I just can't quite keep myself at that particular state of readiness? Are there any drawbacks at all?
Well, here's the first thing to understand. When they tell us, and they do here in Canada as well, when they tell us to be ready or prepared for 72 hours, and after that they say government help will get to you, well, that's not exactly true. If you look at Hurricane Katrina and what happened there, they were a couple of weeks before anybody got to them. Here in Canada, we had the ice storm back in 1998, and they told us to be prepared to support yourself for 72 hours. That didn't work out for a lot of people. There were people that went 2 or 3 weeks without power.
Oh, wow.
No power, no water, nothing, no heat. So that 72 hours, that's a minimum guideline for the government, but you have to be prepared to for longer periods. I tell people to prepare for about a month. Now, where do you get all your fresh water and everything else for a month? This is where you can build yourself a home water filter. And you can do that with material that's around your home. This is just an example. Mm-hmm. We have to remember that a government is responsible for not just us, not just our city, but they're in the U.S., they're responsible for an entire state. Here in Canada, they're responsible for an entire province. And in the case, if it's a federal incident that involves multiple states, then the federal government is going to have a lot more on their mind than just Mike Dube sitting in his home. So the whole idea is that we have to be able to take care of ourselves and only depend on the government for support. So in other words, they become our emergency operations center, but we look after the details of how we're going to get back to regular function. The government will not rebuild our home. That's why we have insurance. They will relocate people to a safe area, not necessarily where we live, and you have to get that in your mind. In the case of Katrina, they took people completely out of the state and moved them to different places. You have to be prepared for that. There's many other things in that respect as well. But my main point is to develop the skills to take care of yourself. So if that means first aid, to do bandaging, being able to build or repair your basic functions for water and this kind of thing, keep your vehicle running, keep your a little bit of money in your pocket, because not all banking machines probably won't work, and there won't be any access to credit cards and that kind of thing. So you should be able to support yourself, get your basic food and that kind of thing. And this is what these are things that we can use to overcome these drawbacks.
Well, you made such a wonderful point, and I think that everyone remembers Hurricane Katrina and the disaster of that hurricane and just how it devastated us as a nation. I think everyone tuned in, and our hearts just broke for all of those people that were stranded, which leads me to my next question, and that's why I'm glad that you brought up Hurricane Katrina, and that is that many times, if you are not in a limited budget situation or a low-income situation, you look at disasters perhaps a little bit differently. Again, focusing on the East Coast, you hear that the hurricane is coming, you pack your items, you get in your car, you drive to higher ground, let's say, or to a safer place. But many times, if you have limited resources, you're not able to evacuate or leave according to when government says that you should. So is there anything that someone who is on a limited budget, or perhaps there are some medical issues that might keep them from leaving on day one when they should, but they're closer to the disaster time. Or the storm has already hit and now they're able to leave. Is there anything that they can do to prepare better?
Right off the bat, I would say, first of all, again, situational awareness. So you will, I keep track of weather and natural disasters, and I suppose I should get a hobby rather than that. But that's how I approach my day. I stay away from the news. I look at what's going on out in the environment. Now, the best thing that people can do for themselves is review their local emergency plan. So the emergency plan for your town, city, or country, or whatever, wherever you live, they are mandated to have an emergency plan. So I don't know how many people really actually go and read it. I know that here in Canada, very few people do. Some people don't even know that it exists. But this is what you do ahead of time, and you look for your particular situation inside that plan. So if there, for instance, if you can't move very fast, if you're with a walker or you're on oxygen and this kind of thing, you look in your plan for that. And then somebody says, well, okay, I can't find my situation in the plan. Then what you do is you call the people who administer the plan and you say, this is what I'm running into. And this is all done, under bright sunlight with birds singing and that kind of stuff. You don't wait. Yeah, you don't wait for the disaster to occur. You don't wait for it to be predicted. Tomorrow morning, you get up and you go into your city's or your town's emergency plan and you look for this stuff. If you again, like I said, if you don't find your particular condition in there, call these people and say, this is the issue that I have. So if we have an emergency here, how can I get help to get to an emergency shelter? And then what happens then is the police, fire, ambulance, they write this down and they say, okay, well, let's say 1011 Main Street South. We've got this person who is bedridden, and they can't get up and move fast. They're going to need to be carried with a stretcher. So then all of a sudden your name goes down on the list, and you would be one of the first people. If they order an evacuation, you would be one of the first people that they're going to go and visit their home and get them out. Mm-hmm. Another thing too, know ahead of time and practice that you are going to be giving up stuff. So keep whatever it is that you believe is going to get you through to restore your functions. Get that packed away, get that secured. Check your insurance plan. And this is a great time to purge things that you don't need. Get rid of them because they just become a burden. I've watched some of these disaster movies, and people are packing huge trunks and suitcases and everything else. It's always funny, especially if they're running away from a lava flow or something from a volcano, or if there's a tornado approaching. I don't think I'm going to worry too much about, packing all my pajamas and everything else. They're going to be flying in the wind, so don't worry too much about that.
Well, Mike, before you start your next thought, it is almost time for us to go to break. So, and I want to give you an opportunity to finish your thought when we get back from break. Can you remind everyone, what is the name of your book? Where can they pick up a copy? And how should we just stay in contact with you?
Okay, my book is called Everyday Readiness Guidance, Expect the Unexpected. It's got a picture of a Sasquatch on it on a cell phone. So that's definitely unexpected. The book itself is on Amazon.com, and it's also available on the Reader's Digest website under their Life Rich Publishing section. And, you can get it both in hard copy and electronic.
All righty, listeners, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be right back right after this. we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Micheal Dube, and he has written the book, Everyday Readiness Guidance. And I am really excited because we're talking about emergencies, disasters, and crises. And being someone who grew up on the East Coast, weather is something that we always had to deal with. Being someone who has lived on the West Coast for almost 20 years, you don't think weather, but surprisingly enough, earthquakes do happen, and you need to be prepared for whatever the disaster may come your way. So, Mike, the next question that I have for you is, how do humans perceive emergencies? Like, how does it affect them when it's bright and sunny outside? And then have you found that there's a different reaction, which I can imagine, once the disaster has passed? Does that help them be prepared for the next one?
Well, I'd like to say yes. But unfortunately what happens with disasters is they fade out of mind pretty quickly. So when people are rebuilding and they begin to restock their homes with possessions and that kind of thing, they forget what the last one was like. Humans tend to experience any event in relation to how it affects them personally. So a person who happens to be caught in a wildfire, and if their house survives, or if they happen to be in a city that's outside of where the wildfire hits, then it doesn't really register on them. Right. Most experiences that people store in their memory, they store them as pictures or feelings and emotions. What happens then is when it comes to making the decision, they recall whatever fits. It may not be exactly what is necessary in the situation, but they'll just recall whatever fits, and they'll say, well, that's the way I'm going to make my decision. So everybody will perceive an emergency differently. I used to tell people when I was doing personal crisis counseling, I would tell people, well, okay, you look at the difference between where you function every day and where you function or how you function in an emergency. At the beginning of when you're born, you have something called eustress. And eustress is what keeps you safe. It keeps you breathing and everything else. That's good stress. That's something that helps you be creative. Well, the next serious level is distress. And at the distress level, which is outside of your brain's ability to cope, that's when the brain starts to go cheap. It starts to shut down normal functions, and it's into fight or flight. And that is when erratic decisions occur. So for people that have not trained themselves to think under stress or pressure, remember when Mom used to ask you one time when you come home with a bloody nose or scraped knees or something like that because of something silly that you did, and she asked you, what were you thinking? And then the standard child's answer is, I don't know. That's true, because we don't know how we think under pressure. We just do whatever fits what we believe is good for us. So when we are presented with an emergency, most people are not trained with basic skills to react automatically. So when we perceive an emergency, our brain goes into shutdown mode. It goes to, do I stand or do I run? And that's when all of the erratic decisions kick in, and this is when things go terribly wrong. This is why people will end up staying put when they're told to evacuate.
And I think that you have really shed some light on the situation when the world watches, when someone else in the world is having a crisis, and they ask the question, why would they stay, or why did they do that? I think that really does help explain all of it. Now, when we are trying to decide that we want to be more prepared, how can we be more prepared within ourselves? Like, is there a particular place that we need to start, or is there a particular thing that we need to do first and foremost to get us on this I'm going to be prepared mindset?
Well, the easiest one to do right now, everybody says that they don't have enough time. Okay, so how do we spend our time? We do a lot of texting and that kind of thing, or watching TV, or playing sports and that kind of thing. Take a little bit of that time every day, every single day, and practice some basic skills. So go out to your car and see if you can change a tire, or go to your fuse box and see if you can change a fuse, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Put down the phone. Try and do an hour without the phone. If you need to get in touch with somebody, try going and knocking on a door, or calling them with a regular telephone, or thinking about this. How would I get in touch with somebody if the cell phone service was out, or if it was so clogged up that nobody could get a call through? How would I get in touch with somebody? These are all little things that we can practice every day, and they don't take a lot of time. Getting together with one or two neighbors, and if you have a garden shed out back, just see what they have in there. If you need shovels or axes or whatever else you need, and you have some stuff in your shed that you can share, just talk to your neighbors and find out what you can, what you can pass around. If you have a local store where you shop a lot, ask him how prepared he is to continue to do business in the case of a loss of power. What kind of food are you going to look for? You don't have to go with fancy meals ready to eat like the military's got. You just get dried foods, dried raisins and or other things like that. Crackers are good. If you could get canned foods, just make sure that there's no dented cans. And I think that canned foods keep an awful lot longer than most other foods. I think you can store them for quite some time. I don't know about expiry dates on them. I haven't really seen a tin of beans or something like that expires after a certain amount of time. Although I wouldn't recommend eating something that's left over from 1966, but yeah.
And I can understand that. I am someone who tries to be prepared. I am by no means, preparations expert or anything like that. But I have done all of these things that you are talking about. And let me tell you, folks, it really and truly does make a difference when you adopt the attitude of let's just be ahead of it as much as we possibly can. I agree with you. We do make sure that we have that emergency supply. And yes, I know my clients are nodding their heads saying, yep, she talks about this all the time, about that contingency plan. What are you going to do should something happen? And it is so easy just to start you a little stockpile and have it somewhere safe in your home. You know what? If you're worried about that can of corn, if you think you've had it, for, like you said, if you had it for 4 months and you're concerned about it, rotate it on upstairs into your kitchen and buy a new can. There's so many things that we can do to make sure that we are ahead of it, and I'm so glad that you're reminding people that they need to do this. But I'm also glad that you said something about practicing what to do when it comes to phones, because I have found that most people no longer have a landline. We tend to only have cell phones. And you made such a great point. What are you going to do if the cell tower is down? Do you have a landline in your home? If not, do we even remember how to knock on our neighbor's door and just make sure that they are okay? Great point that you made there. I want to ask you about something that kind of falls into that same line, and that's using that quote of lessons learned. So many times we say, oh, yep, I learned something from that. But many times people, like you were saying before, I think they learn it in the moment, but they tend to forget it. Are there any things in particular that we need to make sure that we don't forget, that there are some lessons that we don't forget when it comes to being prepared?
Well, if you live in an area where there's a lot of snow, and I look out the window right now, and yes, it is snowing. We're going to be getting a bit tonight. So when you live in an area such as that, look at what it is that's common. Actually, what I do whenever I've moved, I look through the reports and everything else on a particular, dig up some old news items and that kind of thing, and find out what went wrong there. So if they've had a hurricane, or if they had a major trucking accident or something that caused an evacuation, or if there's been a lot of crime in the area, that sort of thing, what lesson can you learn from that? Well, find out. Just look at the reports. What it is that that was found with all of these items, what things that they have in common, and then you look at your own situation and see if you would get caught in it. So if you, for instance, if they tell you around Christmas time, putting out Christmas decorations is interesting and it's fun and it gives you a joyful spirit, that sort of thing, but then you have to be careful, because there are those who go around neighborhoods and look for the best decorated home, and they think, that's one that I can break into and get a lot of good stuff. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful there. What kind of impression are you going to be making to those that you don't even pay attention to? Mm-hmm. If you're walking down a street and you happen to be looking and this is one where I studied martial arts many years ago, and one of our instructors asked us something very basic. He says, when you walk down the street, do you walk with your head down? So he said, how are you going to see or hear a car coming if you're not paying attention, if you're not looking around you? Mm-hmm. For people that are paying more attention to a phone than, as they walk around texting or as they drive and text. If you look at the statistics for yourself or for your age group being in accidents, what are the common factors that got you there? Mm-hmm. These are all lessons that people learned, unfortunately, the hard way. So why don't we remember? Because we think it's not going to happen to us. Right. Or like you said, we're sitting in the comfort of our living room, and we're watching this on TV, and we're watching it so about 2,000 or 3,000 miles away, and thinking, wow, that's really bad. I should be thinking about that. Mm-hmm. But when do you think about it? I like to, unfortunately, like I said, I need a hobby because I write these things down. I go to conferences and that kind of thing, and I take a lot of notes in the lesson learned areas, and I sit and think about that. I sit down at night sometimes when I'm doing my research, and I actually plan out what my responses would be. And this is something, again, doesn't cost any money, and it will help you develop your awareness. So you can turn lessons learned into lessons remembered.
Mm-hmm. 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 I love it. Mike Dube, thank you so much for being with me today on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I have enjoyed my time with you this morning. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's definitely been a pleasure.
So one last time, if you would please, can you remind everyone the title of your book and where can they get a copy, please?
The title of the book is Everyday Readiness Guidance. You'll see a big ERG on it. And right beside it says Everyday Readiness Guidance. Expect the unexpected. My buddy the Sasquatch is on there. And you can get this at Amazon.com in electronic or hard copy. Or you can go to the Reader's Digest website and look under their Life Rich Publishing section, and you will find it there as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Listeners, thank you as well for joining me this morning for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. We hope that you have enjoyed this and something has kind of sparked you, if you will, to make sure that you are prepared for whatever could happen in your neck of the woods. Until next time, everyone, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and be awesome. Bye-bye.